All right, welcome, and my name is Kathy, and welcome to Watercolor. We've been drawing buildings, and so you see the painting we're going to be working on today. This is from a reference photograph from the mountains of North Carolina. So this particular photograph is in Crossnor, and I've done some variations on the photograph, and you will see as I begin to sketch today and paint that I have one version here done on a small Kilimanjaro paper, 140-pound cold press. Cold press, that's right. I'm going to do another quick sketch of this same building going in a vertical rather than a horizontal. And so I'll do part of the drawing here, then I'll switch back to this one. When I need to let things dry, I might return to this one. But to start with, I do use rulers sometimes to get my perspective right. And I want to point out something about this particular photograph. Because we're looking up the hill to this building, the rooftop does not show. In most cases, when we're doing photographs of buildings, we're not looking up at it at this angle. So when I see that the line is perfectly straight from the pitch to the back of this building, that's kind of unusual. So I really will not be having the rooftop show. So what happens is that I begin with the pitch of the roof, and I try to not show this in the center of my design. And when I'm making the overhang of a building, I am looking at it going this way just slightly. Whoops, you know what? This is fairly straight. The reason I have a diagonal line, let me put the photograph next to it, Jim. When I have a little bit of a landscape like this, the ground is slightly angled, and I have to work from the corner of the building. So it's like looking at a box. Yes, let's talk about it looking like a box, the front of this box. And then this side is going down, but truly, I have to say, if I were further up, I might see a little bit of the rooftop, but in this case, I do not. I have to make two lines here to show the edge of the rooftop. And this needs to come down a little more and then angle. Okay, and then my edge of the end of this building I'm putting here. Remember, because I've changed my format, I'm not going to see quite as much of the building when I put it in this position. All right, so it has an interesting, like a quilt design up here. And I changed mine from a star to a heart. I've also done this painting just last week in acrylic. I'm going to do the heart again. Okay, and then I'm going to be drawing these board lines. And I draw them in. Remember I said it's okay to use the ruler, although it's an old building, so maybe it's best if I keep my lines a little bit on the organic side. And this is kind of a log house, although the front of it seems to be faced. When I say log, I see these ends showing up as they go this way now. But before I do that, I really need to pop in the windows that I see in the scale. And there is a door. I'm almost running out of room here, so my cabin is squished a little bit. The lines of the tops will be going together, the lines of the bottom. There's another rail, sorry Patricia, but this one doesn't show much. It's just gonna be a little bit of a rail, as you can see here. And there's this tree right here. I choose to move the tree, although in my acrylic painting, I left the tree kind of where it was, and I'll show you that later if I get around to it. It's up, I just hung it over the mantle, and it's not quite, over the fireplace rather, and it's not quite finished. So I'm suggesting here these logs. All right, so that's the completion of the building, and then I have to work with some stonework, and those stones are on both sides of the building. But I try to put a lot of emphasis on this corner. Okay, and next what I'm gonna do is suggest the landscape. So I'm putting in the shapes of trees and the suggestion of some limbs. And if I wanted to be a little creative, I would set up a mountain back here. So this is just suggesting, and maybe we could be a little loose today. Wouldn't that be fun? Instead of always being so picky like I usually am. And then this foreground, I have to decide, I think I need a little counterbalance thing here. And that's why that shadow is so nice. Maybe I'll just put some grasses in here and put some little flowers or something in this foreground section. Okay, so that's a good start to a sketch based on this particular photograph. Now I'm going to switch back to this one and begin the watercolor. And I'm going to be working with my palette over here. And is this showing up okay, Jim? Mm-hmm. Okay, so my cerulean blue for my sky, just a quick wash. And I didn't even wet my sky as I typically do. Put a little bit of, that's my cobalt. And come back to my cerulean. Ooh, that's really strong. And a lot of this will get covered up anyway with the trees, but I want that to have a nice feeling for the background. You can see through the photograph that you're going to have sky. Okay, so next I'm going to take some of my yellow, and it can be the bumblebee yellow, the lemon yellow. This is that Skips green. If you have any light green, if you don't have a light green, you can make your light green by using a phthalo or a Windsor green. And if the green is that bright, obviously you've got to tone it down with a little bit of brown, burnt sienna, or orange. And that will give you kind of a natural color. Oh, you know, my first intention was really to go ahead and do this ground first. So we have almost a third of the painting finished. Just not quite finished, but you know, covered. And then we can use those same light greens to pop in some layers, because everything's going to have some light green in it showing in different places. So I almost dry brush this effect, and even if I pick up a slightly different green and let some of that run into, you know, I was going to hint at a mountain back there. I wonder if I could still do that. So I've put in suggestion of the greens that are going to be in these trees. They come up into the sky. And I'm thinking I might like to show a bit of a purple. Oof, not quite that bright. Let's do, you know, I tell you, if I put water on my paint, it comes out on me just really crazy. All right, this is getting carried away, I know. I did get carried away, didn't I, Jim? Oh, wow. All right, so now what do I have to do? I have to take a paper towel and tone it down a little bit. Wow, now that's not bad. Okay, so I have some mountains back there.
That's what that is.
Yeah, yeah, that's what that is. So I have a hint showing through of not only the sky, but some mountains in the background. All right, so I'm going to put a layer on the building, and I want to use my blues, and since I have the purple there, I'll use it too, and my brown to make a gray. And you can get a gray by blue-brown, as I've said before, and the more blue you have, the cooler the color, the more brown, the warmer the gray. So I'm going to go toward the blue end because this is kind of a bluish, and I know this is going to start out a little dark. So I'm going to end up doing a second wash of the shadow up here. But I can go ahead, since I've got this dark, and suggest it. This is always done at the end. I don't know why I'm doing it now. Okay. But I can't contain myself, so I'm just doing it. I think that happens to us when we're doing our art, that we just do it because we feel like doing it. All right. Now, I like that shadow, but it's pretty darn purple, and I will need to blue it and brown it some more. Sometimes I need more puddles on my palette than I have. So I'm just going to creatively put a little brown in there. Why not? And while I've got this flat side, except for I have to be careful, I don't want to touch up here or it'll run. But see how you can use the flat of the brush. That's a great little technique. And I just decided to go ahead and get that going with that little bit of shadow that's there. And these are very distinct kinds of logs in here. Oh, and speaking of which, these windows are really dark. I guess I could even get darker than that.
Oh, shucks, I'm sorry.
What happened?
I think I flipped the, I don't know what I did.
Are we still there, Jim?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so this is a door. I have to switch to my little brush. Right, and get in, sorry, I have to shape my brush to do what I want it to do. And sometimes it requires getting a little more water on it or a little more paint. All right, and I'm working a little faster than I like to work to get that suggested. Those are the spaces in the rail. And okay, now these lines need to, I'll probably have to come back in and get rid of all that white on this side. Okay, I needed to have given a coat of paint to my, trying to get a nice color back to that gray color for here. But you know what, it's still too dark. Well, now that's light. Okay, okay. Maybe a little more blue.
Yeah, can you hold the camera still?
I'm still wanting to darken this shadow. And I paint. Oh, Jim is holding it for me. That's the problem. It's hard for him to hold it still. You want to prop your arm on my shoulder, Jim?
You're moving too, Kathy.
Oh, I am. Okay. All right. So sometimes just dragging the brush will give you a nice dry brush for that. And I'll still come in and do my lines on that. Why don't I let this dry just a little bit before I continue? Because now that's really blue. I like that color in there, so let me just leave it. I'm going to get the blue and brown going again with a nice dark and start on some of these trees. The problem with working too quickly like I am for this demo is that things are just not dry enough to be doing what I'm doing yet. So, and suggesting these trees, as you can see here, I think what I'll do is skip down to these stones, get a little bit more done there, then I'll work on some darker greens. Okay. Let me switch to a smaller, a lighter brush. Same color, just a little more water. So the stonework does have a lot of darks around it. So I'm going to be using my pencil lines to, as a matter of fact, if I zoom this over and let you see how here, all I've done is take that darker color and sort of paint around the bottom of the stones to bring those out. And I was able to draw these lines individually. Okay, so again, I would do a little wash and then just paint these shadows kind of underneath individual stones. Is this showing up okay, Jim? Is this showing up okay? Okay. We may have to use the tripod next time. This is sort of hard on Jim holding it, but he figured this might help you to see closer what's going on. It's, again, just drawing these lines when this begins to dry. And suggesting the wood. All right, so we're getting the cabin started, and I'm going to switch now to, obviously when we do this little heart here, I have to shadow what's dark and what's light, and I meant to make that a blue instead of the color that it turned out to be. I should have left it white, is what I should have done, and put the blue around it. Here I'm just going to let it be the red now. And I would draw some more lines in there to make it look like that it's painted up here on the side of this building. I don't want it to look sloppy, and I am a little sloppy right now. The shadow is going to be affected here. So when this dries, I'm going to wash a shadow over it so you get this effect that's going on here. All right, so I had a few colors in the earlier piece, that like some bushes, and I suggested the flowers in them before I did the greens around them. All right, so let's get to some of the greens. I have over here this very dark green, and this is like the Windsor green or a phthalo green, and I added red to it. So I've got a lot of puddles here. I've got a little lighter up here and a little darker down here. I don't want to jump right to my total dark, and I want to get some of the dark started. Again, when I'm trying to make something pop out, I tend to put the darks at the bottom, and then I switch to like a different brush and drag that color in to this lighter color. It's just a technique of layering one bush like in front of another. And I'll come back and get darker there. I forgot which brush is which. All right, so this is carrying on. Let's put another little hint of a shape in here. And if I do a little negative painting like right here, this can look like grass. I'll show it here as well. So I'm pushing some of that and just doing some dry brush. So it feels like layers here. Now I chose not to put this big tree in the foreground since this is just such a small piece, but you could. That's up to you. Okay, so I'm beginning to get some layers here, and I'm dry brushing. And I'm going to go with a little more. Let's jump into some of this really dark. Now I'm only going to take a few more minutes here because I think you get the idea. It does have to be built up. I want to do the trees, at least one tree in here. And so these are, I think I'm making these pine trees. I think if you noticed some of the pine trees in the finished work, I think you just need a symbol for how does a pine tree, it comes off. It's obviously bigger at the bottom. I'm using this to frame the roof here. And it gets a little smaller as it comes up. But any tree is going to have the lighter green on the top and the darker green underneath the lighter green. So that's a funny looking tree. Let's see here. I'm using this end, this brush. You can see how it's sprayed out. Sort of push this to look like the needles on a pine tree. So I think we practiced a little landscape earlier in our class where we talked about mountains. So you can apply some of that learning from practicing your pine trees then to now. And I have to keep growing this tree because I got a little fat up there at the top. Okay, so the same thing happens over here. Well, I like my brush is working pretty good, so I'm not going to stop. And then I go back to I'm running out of paint there. All right, so sorry about my brushes always being in the way. And here, just do the same thing. I'm gonna let this tree come down. I feel like I need to add a little more red or brown into my green. It's terribly bright green. I want it to get darker. These pine trees are so dark. If you look at them, they're gonna almost say that they're, oh, there's a little hint. I want to show you something that's kind of fun. If you keep doing these trees, they're all gonna be too much the same. So you want them to vary a little bit. I want to put some trees that are kind of in the background. I'll show you what I mean. I'm gonna finish this one like it's going behind these, okay? And I might join it over here with this one. And I might make it not quite as tall, or maybe it does need to go up. I think I've sketched it so they're supposed to be up. And I can hint that things are behind it. All right, so let me take this in a blue, and I'm gonna make a little bit of a green. I've got such a mess on my palette. I hope I can make this work. All right, so if I want a tree that looks like it's far away, I use a blue. And it still has a hint of the mountains behind it. I'm gonna take my little brush, give a little more detail to it. And so it's suggesting that these are little distant pine trees. So you can do that kind of popping in a couple of different places in your design. All right, I know I'm not finished, and perhaps the only other little thing I want to do, I don't like that one. I need to make it more blue like I did the others. Oh, I want to do my shadow, and then I want to do something in the foreground. I'm not going to finish this tree, but I think I will do a little bit more here to distinguish what's happening right here. This is in your foreground, and just by doing more darks, you get the feeling of this light and shadow. Now, the light is coming down, okay? But this building must be blocking some of the light because it seems to be dark in this area. So that's why I chose to do it that way. I'm gonna make this pop out by just putting some dark around it. And maybe suggesting the shape of a tree there. And just doing some little dabbing. The little dabbing suggests shadows within the bushes themselves, or tree. These are little short trees. So you see how everything's kind of coming to life over here on this side. It's not done, but it's getting that idea. All right, so if these were grasses here, or if this was a bush, then we would come along and do this shape, and we might do something like a little shadow through here, maybe from a tree that is on this side that we could surround this bush with to help it. Now, you know, I have these pieces of paper stuck with masking tape, but masking tape and cardboard are not acid free, so I have to get these off once I use it just to stabilize my piece of paper, just for a reference here. Now, I'm gonna let this look like a shadow, so I'm gonna drag the shape along. Maybe make some indentations on the ground. All right. Oh, I was going to show you the shadow here and then call it almost done. And the shadow is going to be, again, a blue-brown color. But I've got this purple, so I'm still seem to be using it. And I'm going to do a wash right across that one more time. Try to keep it nice and crisp so that it reads like a shadow on the building. Now, I still have to come in and darken up my lines. I keep getting, there's that dark I've been looking for. It has a little more blue in it this time. And I'm really crisping up this shadow. And over here, I do have an overhang. All righty. I know I'm not done. Let's call it done for now. And I'll just pop this in its place so you can see what it does when you continue with these trees, or you really build a lot more landscape. Here I've placed this tree in front and I've tried to make enough variation there. Okay. Thanks.